You know, for most of us, there's one number we're taught to chase: our income. Getting a bigger salary, that feels like winning, right? A promotion, that's progress. But what if that whole way of thinking is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how wealth actually works? It turns out the game of income and the game of wealth, well, they're not the same game at all. And getting that difference, that's everything.
So let's just ask the question directly. Does a high salary actually make you wealthy? I mean, the automatic answer, the one that jumps into most people's heads is, yeah, of course it does. But the data, well, the data tells a completely different story.
Okay, just look at this number, 48%. What is that? That's the percentage of people earning over $100,000 a year who are living paycheck to paycheck. Think about that for a second. That's nearly half. We're not talking about some small, unlucky group here. This is a huge chunk of high earners who, for all their impressive income, have basically no financial cushion at all.
And this gets us to what we could call the six-figure illusion. You know the feeling, right? It's that strange place you get to where you're finally earning an income you always thought would make you feel rich, but you don't. You still feel like you're just treading water, like you're not really getting ahead. And somehow, you find yourself constantly needing more just to keep everything going.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? I had confused looking rich with being rich. That's the heart of the problem right there. See, a high income makes it incredibly easy to afford the appearance of wealth. You can get the luxury car lease, you can move into the bigger apartment, you can go out for those expensive dinners. But none of those things are assets. In fact, they do the exact opposite. They actively burn through the money you could have used to build real wealth. Okay, so here's the most important thing to get your head around. Income and wealth aren't just different numbers on a spreadsheet. They are two completely different games. Imagine trying to play chess using the rules of checkers. That's what's happening here. They have different rules, different strategies, and totally different ways to win. And confusing one for the other, well, that's exactly how people get trapped. All right, let's really break this down. Think of income as speed and flow. It's how fast money is moving through your life. It's an active game. It depends on you constantly showing up and performing. Net worth, though, that's totally different. It's about your position. It's about structure. It's not about how much flows through, but how much actually stays and builds. It's about ownership, which is passive. It's like being on a treadmill. You can be running really, really fast, generating a lot of speed, but you're not actually going anywhere.
So, when we're talking about real wealth, this is the number. This is the only number that truly matters: your net worth. It's simple, really. It's all the stuff you own, your assets, like stocks, real estate, maybe a business, minus all the stuff you owe, your liabilities. That's it. That's the real scoreboard of your financial life.
Okay, so let's dig into why the income game is such a tough trap to get out of. It's this cycle that so many smart, successful people find themselves stuck in. You could call it the high earner hamster wheel.
And here's exactly how that wheel spins. Step 1, your income goes up. You get that raise, that promotion, awesome. Step 2, you immediately justify a lifestyle upgrade. A nicer car, a bigger house, you name it. Then step 3, that new lifestyle, it just becomes the new normal. It's your new baseline for expenses. And then comes step 4. Suddenly, you're under all this pressure to keep that high income coming in just to support the very lifestyle you've now locked yourself into. This is why so many high earners feel so stuck. Their financial engine is revving higher and higher, but their actual position on the map isn't changing. Their net worth, it barely moves. So what's driving this? Well, the first big psychological trigger is what we can call the justification mindset. It's that little voice in your head that says, hey, I worked hard for this, I put in the 80-hour weeks, I deserve this. And look, that's totally understandable. But that feeling of entitlement, it can become the biggest enemy of building wealth. Every single one of those deserved purchases is money that could have gone toward building a real financial structure.
The second driver is even sneakier because it's almost invisible. It's your social environment. When everyone around you, your colleagues, your neighbors, your friends, is driving a certain type of car or living in a certain type of house, their spending just becomes your default. It's the benchmark. And you start trying to keep up, often without even consciously realizing that's what you're doing. So if that's the trap, what's the way out? What's the alternative? Well, it's a completely different system, one that's focused on building wealth, not just income. And I'll tell you right now, this system is usually slower, it's way less visible, and it's not nearly as exciting in the short term. But let's look at a powerful real-world example of how it works.
I want to tell you about a guy named Ronald Reed. Now, to anyone who knew him in a small town in Vermont, he was just a normal guy, a janitor and a gas station attendant,
drove an old truck, wore secondhand clothes, but his story perfectly shows that the wealth game has almost nothing to do with how much you earn. Throughout his entire working life, his income was incredibly modest. It never went above $20,000 in a single year. I mean, by the standards of the income game we've been talking about, he wasn't even playing. But when Ronald Read died, he left behind a fortune of more than $8 million. And no, it wasn't an inheritance. It was wealth that he built himself on a tiny income. The gap between his income and his net worth is it's absolutely staggering. And it tells you everything you need to know about the power of having the right system.
So what was his secret? It was almost shockingly simple. He just understood the wealth formula. His whole focus was on keeping the gap between what he earned and what he spent as wide as humanly possible. He lived simply, saved relentlessly, and then he invested that money patiently into good, solid companies, and just let it sit there for decades, compounding away. He was playing the long game, the ownership game.
So what's the big takeaway here? It really comes down to understanding the deep structural differences between these two games. It goes way beyond just your spending habits. It's about how your entire financial life interacts with the force of time.
Let's put them side by side. First, look at the relationship with time. Your income depends on you working. If you stop, it stops. So time is actually working against you. But with net worth, time is your single greatest ally. It's what allows your assets to grow and compound. Then there's the emotional reward. Income gives you these quick dopamine hits, right? A bonus, a raise. It feels good for a moment. Net worth, on the other hand, gives you something much deeper, a real sense of stability. But the biggest difference, the primary benefit, that's the real game changer.
The real prize for winning the wealth game isn't a fancy car. It's this word, optionality. And that is the true definition of financial freedom. Optionality is the ability to leave a job you hate without having another one lined up. It's the freedom to take a year off to help a family member or to jump on a great investment opportunity when it appears. It's the power to say no, the power to wait, the power to just walk away from a bad deal. A high income alone can't buy you that.
And this really is the key mental shift you have to make. Your income isn't the goal. It's just a tool. A very powerful tool, sure. Think of it as fuel. But if you're just using that fuel to power a bigger and bigger lifestyle, you're just burning it. The real goal is to use that fuel to build an engine, your net worth, that can eventually run all by itself.
So this all boils down to one critical question you have to ask yourself. Is your income building a lifestyle, or is it building a financial structure? When you get more money, is it going toward accelerating your spending or accelerating your ownership? Is your whole system designed to create a more impressive-looking lifestyle or a more resilient financial foundation?
Because at the end of the day, that's the final lesson here. A high income can certainly make you look rich, but a high net worth is what makes you financially independent. One is visible, but it's fragile. The other is mostly invisible, but it's solid as a rock. And over the long run, structure always beats appearance.